It's like a battery charging my heart right now. And oh, you left all the things you had, but not just found. And I know you had to go, but left me not to know. Like a snake's target stung, but I had to show your battery.
Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
First proper episode. You were high on my list of people I wanted to sort of speak to.
Do I take it as a compliment or not?
I absolutely would, because we, it's one of our early episodes, and help yourself, by the way. It's one of our early episodes, and we kind of want people that we feel are going to sort of speak their mind a little bit and just sort of share what they think about the game and their experiences in Wales and stuff like that. And first time I sort of encountered you for a while was kind of Twitter.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you come across sometimes on Twitter like there's some people that give you a bit of stick. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you kind of feel like you've got something to prove to them, or
Twitter is a mad old world, and look, I think it's a different place now where it was 5 or 6 years ago in Welsh football, but there's people, you have a perception, even yourself, I only really know you through Twitter, and people build up this image and perception of you, and I had a stage when I was at Ynysddu in particular, we were murdered on social media, but that's what built...
That was an active place, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was also, it was a ploy by ourselves to try and create something a bit different, and I built a bit of a reputation up, but it's not the real world either, and I'm very much that opinion. If people don't like me because of social media, then all the best, it's one of those, and I'm a different person face to face, and on the pitch side I'm on social media, but I speak my
So is that where it comes from? Is it the Ynysddu days?
Yeah, pretty much. So I was Ynysddu through and through. I was there for 20 years, but when I took over as manager, we had no youth side, no finances, and struggling to attract players, so we had to create something a little bit different.
Yeah.
So we said, let's try and play up a little bit on social media, and we created a bit of a beast there.
Yeah.
And we were attracting players off the back of it, and we went through a really good spell. And
I lost a player to you once from Welsh League when obviously you were trying to come up. Lost Lloyd Stone went.
Oh, Stoney, Stoney was a good mate of mine. He was our captain for a couple of years. And
good player, good lad as well.
Yeah, well, back in the amateur league days, he played a couple of games when signings were totally different. In those days, you could sign players whenever you want, and he used to come back when the Welsh League season finished. He'd play a couple of games for us, but he's still a good mate of mine now. I still speak to him regularly. In fact, he's doing a lot with Treowen. He's through his mental health charity.
Is he?
Yeah, he runs a mental health charity now. So we've had tragically, I think we've had 3 suicides involved with the club this year. Yeah, a coach, a player's sister, and an ex-player. So it's been a tough time for the club. But yeah, Lloyd has got involved, and he's doing some workshops and stuff, so he's still active with the Welsh football, to be fair, and he's a good lad.
Good boy, Stoney.
Good player as well, really good player.
They're coming back, aren't they, Ynysddu? Did I see on... Or is that just they're trying to see if they can get it going?
No, there's a player who used to play for their seconds, who's from Bargoed, no links to Ynysddu at all, but they're trying to create what we created before, and with no real thought behind it. Look, I'd love him to come back, but the reality is he'll never take off.
Yeah. Never go back, Roddy.
Yeah, there's no infrastructure, probably jumping ahead a little bit. One of the reasons why I left was I'd done everything at the club. I was secretary, social media, manager, player. I was literally trying to do everything, and it got to a stage where we took the club as far as we can with no youth side coming in. We didn't pay any players. It was, how do you keep that going every single year? And we won the league in Division 2. We went to Division 1. We were close to winning it in our first season. The second season, then we were having people sniff at our players all the time to go up to the Welsh League levels. And how do you keep them? And without the youth side coming through, then we tried our best to get that going, and it's just difficult.
It doesn't last, does it?
No,
unfortunately, you can get teams that have a good generation, and they might get 2 or 3 good years out of them because they stay together because they're winning.
Yeah.
But long term, they're going to go back to their natural place.
And it was exactly that. We had a phenomenal 4-year spell, but when I left them for a really good opportunity. But I think that season they finished 4th in the year, but it was the year COVID struck.
Yeah.
And I think COVID really was the nail in the coffin for them, because after that they lost a couple of players during COVID who couldn't be bothered to play football, and then it just slowly but surely dwindled off. And it's sad to see, because it was a great club. But Christ, in my 20 years there was probably 4 times they were close to going to the wall, because no youth sides coming through, so you're trying to attract a couple of players, try and get a manager who could bring 3 or 4 in, and that would happen. But not real sustainable long term. So it just keeps having that revolving cycle.
Obviously, we're recording this at Lanrumley United's new clubhouse this evening. So thanks to them for jumping in there and allowing us to record. You've seen the ground. We just give you a very quick tour when you arrived, and that's one of the good things for this club, I think, is that when we first got involved, the oldest team below senior football was under 12s. And the club knew they had to wait, but now it's got a first team, a second team, it had a third team for part of the last season, 2 youth teams. Next year it'll be 3 youth teams, and the number of youth players that are going through into the second and first teams now is brilliant. But you know, it gives the club a chance, and when you see the facilities here now as well, it's got half a chance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Outside, you know, football clubs, it's very difficult to run a football club in Wales. You know, there's so many clubs competing. You have to offer something a little bit different. And players, they do like good facilities. They want a good playing pitch. Even little things like the change rooms, the clubhouse, it all does have a little bit of an impact. But you know, and younger generations seeing that, you know, it's driving in today, even on the parks. I'd say it was great to see how many kids up there playing and goalposts up and stuff. And up in the Welsh Valleys, you don't get to see much of that these days.
Really?
You know, the councils make it very difficult, even for our own perspective. Our ground's being developed at the moment, ready for the season. We're not allowed to train on any pitches in Caerphilly Borough until start of July. You can only book 3G pitches 1 week in advance. So even for us trying to plan a pre-season is an absolute nightmare.
How do you do it then? Because, I mean, all the years me and Rod and other coaches were putting pre-season together at various clubs, it was always, apart from AFC Porth one day where we could go on the pitch, it was always just, you know, a local park where there were some parks, football pitches and stuff like that. How on earth what do you do?
That's the problem in Caerphilly. You can't pretty much do anything, because if you get caught on those pitches, then you get fined. You know, and that's been pretty much a black market club. So with our pitch at the moment, we're trying to find areas of the pitch that we can train on and move around. It's an absolute nightmare, and the council are just reluctant to support any. And the worst thing for me is they say is to maintain the pitches. And I can guarantee you there'll be absolutely no maintenance on any of those pitches this summer. And it's all about costs, and you've probably seen it on the news in recent weeks where Caerphilly Council put a 75% hike on prices. And that kicked off. They've reduced it now, but it's still, I think, for a training pitch, I believe it's £45 for a session now, which you think of a club of our size, and people don't really understand how big Treowen is. I think we've got 47 active sides now, throughout full boys section, full girls section. So the cost of training facilities are absolutely astronomical.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same here for Lanrumley, to be fair. I think it's over 400 kids now.
Yeah, well, 450 registered, but that's one of the reasons that attracted me to Treowen, because as we talked about with Ynysddu, you have to be sustainable and having a constant throughfare. But the biggest disappointment with Treowen over the years is that's not really progressed into the senior side. So it's something that we're really working hard on. I think this year we've used 7 of the 19 squad in our first team.
7? In a successful team as well.
Yeah, and 1 or 2 of them have been quite regular. Some of them are odd games here and there, but it's important that they see a pathway through to the first. And I think this year we're probably going to run 2 under-18 side and an under-21s in the new FAW League. So we've got a really good pathway for the players coming through, but they have to see that link into the first team.
Yeah, you're right. The pathway thing is massive. Like Gareth said down here, the pathway is massive because of that whole thing of people wanting to go through and see. We did a big thing with the kids, of wanting to come through and see those kids, see the first team and have aspirations to be in that position.
Yeah, it's
rather than just.
Even this year, you know, we've had our days of success, but I was adamant, let's get the under-12s here, let's have some mascots there. We offered things throughout the year. The parents got free entry to the ground if their kid turns up in Treowen gear and stuff, just to try and get those youngsters to see the first team in action. I think I want to be part of that going forward, you know. And the day we lifted the trophy, it was great. I think we had 300 there. The kids, they've all done a clubhouse after begging for trophies, pictures with the trophies and stuff. So. And that's what he wants to be. You know, I'm not naive enough to think we'll only have local boys playing for the side in the long term, because we've got aspirations to keep growing. But if we can get 1 or 2 every year out of that youth section coming into the first, then it'll only benefit us. And it also helps going into the Company South, where we can have an 18-man squad. So we can always take 1 or 2 extra just to give them experience of being a change room. Because sometimes, and it is hard with kids these days, because we've had 16 and 17-year-olds asking, am I going to start every week for you?
Oh, stop.
Like, it's just not going to happen. And you've got to be. We've got a young lad, Max and Evans, with us. He's 20 now, and I brought him in from Aberbargoed last summer. I think he's been on the bench 17 times this year, hasn't complained once. And he's towards the end of the season, I think he started 6 out of the last 7 games. I believe in 2 years' time he'll be a Welsh Premier player. His father, Craig Evans, played Welsh Premier football for a long time. And it's about the attitude, but then I got other boys who are 17 years of age thinking, I'm not training because I am playing every week. And it's like, you know, you're playing for your 19s every single Sunday. just be in the changing room and experience it and train with the first team boys, because that's where you'll get better.
That has come in more though, hasn't it? You've probably seen it in your time coaching and managing as well. There's been a big change in that direction, and I'm going to sound like my father here now, 70 odd years old, but I think smartphones have got a lot to do with it.
Hugely.
Like I won't name the guy, but I can still remember the guy when we were at Cross y Ceiliog, and I named the team, and he wasn't in it, and he just reached immediately for his phone, and he was messaging someone, and it was I don't think we'd even come off the pitch, and there was a 7-day notice of approach that he'd obviously engineered. Do you know? And he didn't end up going. It was all about attention. But it was. I just think nowadays it's so unrealistic, and there's always someone willing to take the lad that's being totally unrealistic, isn't there?
Sure.
Rather than saying, hang on, if he wants to leave after being on the bench twice at 17, I don't want that problem. Someone will always take him, won't they?
Yeah,
and blow a bit of smoke. And
we lost a player earlier on this year. I think he's 19, 20, was at the Swansea Academy when I came in. Great football player, but he missed a bit of pre-season, and we had a really strong competitive side. Missed a couple of games, and we left him out of the game down Aberbargoed. We won the game 6-1. The next game then, asked availability, he needed a reply. Whether he was available or not, so he wasn't in the matchday squad again. Next thing I know, I got a transfer request off the side, and he's gone there to play regular football. Turns out he didn't play regular football. That's how he got relegated, you know, and it's... But because he wasn't playing in the side every week, that won 7 on the bounce, I'm out. Do you mean? And at that age, you've got to bide your time, and you know the best players sometimes they spend 2 or 3 years sat on the bench and just learning the game, and it's difficult with youngsters these days. And I think academy football has a lot to say for it. Where kids are coming in, they expect to play every single week at 16, 17. You know, and it's tough.
First time I came across it was after I left Crossy. I rather controversially went to Cumbrae Celtic a week later. Which was an interesting time. But Cumbrae Celtic was a club that had an academy at the time, you know, before all the regulations changed. And what you found there was young players that have gone through the academy. They've probably always been in the team, star player, never sub. And then they come up into senior football at 18 and they're on the bench and they've never known it, ever. They've always been the main man. And that group of kids seemed to struggle in a way that I'd never seen before from 17, 18-year-olds who were a little bit more realistic. And then ever since then, I think that's exploded now.
It's massive. And I like to say, I think the academy structure is a good thing, but I also think it takes away some of that enjoyment of playing football, but also the love for a football club, because like some young kids, they start at a club and they're pretty much there until they're 18, 19, they might move on. But now kids are moving to an academy at 12, 13. In particular, professional academies, they get football rammed down their throat 3 times a week. At 16, then, a lot of them get discarded and they just fall out of love of football. And they want to turn up somewhere, have an easy ride, play football every single week. And I think it's, participation in Wales is still good, but I think the younger generation, you talk about smartphones and computers and stuff, they want to drop off. But I think, academy football for the ones who are really good and successful has been a fantastic thing. But I think the professional ones, we see it locally with Newport, that the amount of kids that get discarded at 16 because they're not the next £10 million player, and then they just fall out of love of football and end up at tier 7 maybe. And it's because they've had it rammed in their throats. They don't really feel a love for football. They haven't got really any love for any football.
And they just want to do it with their mates.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, I've always said from 14, my son now, a couple of his mates play for Next Gen and Dragons, I think they are.
Okay.
He's begging me to go to trials. I'm like, it's just not what you want. You're playing with a club with your mates you love. And in reality, I don't mind saying it on camera, he's not going to be good enough to make it on the academy level, And it's hard for a parent to say that to your kid, but they think playing for an academy is this massive thing that you're going to be a professional footballer. And the reality is, I think the Dragons one, they play in Bristol every week or further afield. When you're travelling 2 hours every Saturday to play football, you'll have some games on the bench, which is absolutely fine. But when you're 16 and you think, well, I haven't made it, what was the point of me doing that?
Chasing the dream.
You don't play with your friends anymore. That club has moved on. You think, what's left for me now? So it's tough. It's tough, and some parents, I think some parents want to walk around and tell their kids play for an academy as well. Which affects the kids then as well. It's tough.
Yeah, I do cringe a bit. I see some parents from this area sometimes. They're obviously immensely proud of their kids.
Yeah.
But like, you know, you see a 7-year-old sign in for Cardiff City and you're like, look, well done, young man, you're obviously good. But come on, like, sign in.
Exactly, you know, and yeah, like I say, you know, that kid might become a professional football player, but I still think until you're 12, 13, you should have the enjoyment of playing with your mates every week, because football is about enjoyment as well. It's not just about being the next big football player. And don't get me wrong, if every club, if they could get somebody into professional football, that would be brilliant for them. But kids have got to enjoy playing it, and sometimes it gets rammed down their throat so much it just takes their love away from the game.
I agree with that.
You just become a robot.
Yeah. I mean, it's moving on to the season just gone. I mean, smile on your face there, thinking back. You know, you're fresh home from a holiday today. I take it you needed it after the season. Yeah,
well, I say at the Football Manager, you don't have an holiday, do you? My phone was red hot all week, but I also wouldn't change that. You know, to be fair, Treowen has been a club. Christ, before I was even manager of Ynysddu, I went on was my assistant manager this year, my best mate Stag, and he was involved with Treowen at the time. So half the Ynysddu players and half the Treowen group went, and the Treowen chairman was there, and we had a laugh and a joke. And I said to him one day, I'll manage Treowen. And he was like, yeah, no, we were laughing and joking. And we've always stayed in touch, and it's always a club. It is my closest club as well. It's only 5 minutes in the car for me, so I say my closest club at this level. So when I left Abertillery 18 months ago, we had a brief conversation, but there was a manager in place, which I didn't want to get rid of at the time, just biding my time. And the opportunity came then, they knocked on the door back end of April, and I made it clear from day one, you know, the resources at Treowen are good. So there was one simple expectation of winning the league. Anything else would have been a failure. And they were laughing at me. We finished 10th in the table. Why on earth are we going to win the league next year? And I said, it will happen, you know. And the boys have been fantastic. The league's good. There's some good sides in it, but I think at that level to win the league by 12 points, you know, with games to spare as well, I think it shows how well the boys played. They were excellent. But it was a long time coming as well, because I think we went top of the table on the 13th of August, and the only time we dropped off there was February time, where Chepstow had played like 4 games more than us, so we were pretty much top of the table all the way throughout the season.
I watched Chepstow back in October. They were home to Cross y Ceiliog, and they actually lost that day. But I came away from the ground thinking Chepstow are a good team. Yeah,
well, the back end of last season, I was at Aberbargoed, and he had a couple of months there. Bad time in my football managerial career. We went there with 12 players, and they were a good side. I think they won 12 on the bounce. Mark Ingler's done a brilliant job. They're a really young side. They've been clever in picking some boys up from over the border, and they were my tip at the start of the season. You know, outside of us, I thought they'd do really well. And to be fair, we've pretty much blew everybody away this year. And we went over to Chepstow in March. It was a massive game. I think we were 9 points clear. They had 2 games in hand. So if they beat us that game, it was right in their hands. And they played a box midfield first half, and we was expecting it, but we struggled with it. And they were 2-0 up half time, and they absolutely battered us. It could have been 4 or 5. But then the frailty showed second half. We showed our experience. Now, the one thing that's just got us through this year is the squad. You know, starting 11, Chepstow, Goitra, they've been good sides, but I think we've had 17, 18 every week. So we're looking at our bench thinking we're going to be okay here. I made 2 changes over there, and within 48 minutes, we were 2-all. You know, and you could see they lacked, because they're such a young side, they lacked a bit of experience and a bit of.
Do you know what I liked about them, though? And it's controversial today in styles of play being discussed so much, but they were obviously a team with good attacking players, and they were capable of playing really good football, but not a single goal kick went short. And it's just this bugbear I've got about football at the moment. I mean, it's the same at the top level. But you know, you'll see my comments occasionally on Twitter about it. But I'm just sick of watching Match of the Day or watching games all around Wales at different levels, and watching goal kicks go 4 yards to a 6'5" centre half who's a centre half because he's good in the air and good defensively. I'm just thinking, you're 35. You've never played like this until you were 32. Why are you playing like this now? And it was just, despite them having loads of good footballers, good young, talented guys, they were still pragmatic enough that day to say, look, pitch is a bit soft. Let's hit the halfway line and we'll play once we're in their half.
The goalkeeper's distribution is fantastic. You know, and they got a boy, Adam Wakely up top. He's a strong lad. And their goals over there, I think the first one, they picked up off the left back straight into the one centre forward, off to the number 10 into the other centre forward goal. You know, it was simple but really effective. And they're good at it, but don't get me started on philosophies in football. You know, I get asked the question every single week. My philosophy is simple: win football matches.
So,
you know, and if we've got to go and play long ball to win a football match, or sometimes we will. This year has been different for us. We have been dominant, so we have we've had a lot of the ball, you know, and we do want our defenders to play. But there's other games, like when we played Chepstow at home, it was, I think we were 12 clear. If we didn't lose that game, the fight was over. We didn't play a pass all game. You know, we just banked up and just said, come and break us down. And we went long, played on the counter, and we got the result that we needed, you know. So, look, you see it at Premier League level, some clubs, you know, Spurs are a perfect example. They wanted a manager to come in and play pretty football. The results are not happening now, so they want another manager, you know. They had Mourinho and Conte, two great winners. So the football wasn't pretty enough for them, so they've got to change, you know. And it's, I'm sure every football club just wants to be winning football matches.
It used to be the case, though, years ago. I used to see managers around this time of year, and they'd say, "Oh, we're going to do this next year." Remember bumping into Lee Bridgman when he was Taft's Well manager, and he said to me, "We're going to play without." I won't do his accent. We're going to play without a number 9 this year, he said. And I looked at him and I said, "That'll last about a month." And it didn't even last a month. But now, and he was savvy enough to say, "I've got this wrong. I'm going to change it, and I'm going to be brave enough to say to the players, I've got that wrong." Now they stick to it, a lot of people. They stick to this nonsense that's not working. And if it works, look, power to you. You know, I mean, we were with STM Sports, just the other side of the fence there, for a 2/3 of a season or whatever it was. Now, they could do it. And our Lamwern, now Newport City team, could do it. We could, you know, nice surfaces, good footballing players that could play out. But everyone's trying to do it.
Well, Brisker,
right players, isn't it?
Brisker United come up to us in February. You know, Brisker play on Astra Manach, lovely 3G surface, ex-academy players, good players. They play the ball really well. Come into Bush Park in February, you can't play football as well as you do. Within 15 minutes, we were 2-0 up because they tried to play 2 balls out the back off a goal kick. They've lost them both on the edge of the 18-yard box. We knew what they were going to try and do. We've set up to do that. We've taken the ball off and scored twice. 10 minutes later, they're still doing the same thing, you know. And look, to be fair credit them, they had a fantastic season from where they were, so it's no criticism of what they've done. But yeah, it's balmy, you know. Even this year, if I want my centre-half to drop in now, go up to Cymru's House and play football every week, we're going to have a rude awakening very quickly. So we've got to change the way we want to play this year. But it's just about winning football matches, and I think the FAW have got a lot to do with it because, you know, as we talked about Twitter earlier on, there's Dean Morris used the word a lot, the badge brigade on it, and the badges in football these days is not many managers, there's a lot of coaches, and you go on the FAW coaches, and to be at even at tier 3 now, you've got to have a C licence and stuff, and even that's changed from a C certificate. So, but even on them, you're being taught the Welsh way. So you have to they're trying to get every coach in Wales to play the same way as Wales does. And when you go on, you're talking about your footballing philosophies and stuff. And whilst I do think it's great, because look, I was a failed player, but I would have loved to have the coaching now that players are getting.
I agree with that.
Years ago, it was all about man management, but no, my football training sessions was, here's a ball, going to have a game. Whatever numbers you got, we'll mix the sides up, we'll have a game. So there was no coaching whatsoever, or we'd be running around the pitch for an hour. So I would have loved to have that level of coaching, but then you miss out on the management side of it. And, you know, the guy I was involved with at Abertillery, Lee Thomas, he's played football league games, you know, he's been involved in football for 50 years, but he can't manage at tier 3 because he didn't have a C licence. You're thinking, you know, what's going on there? Because he's a phenomenal football manager. He knows absolutely everything about it. Really good coach as well. But because he can't put his time to do a couple of badges, he can't manage at tier 3 in Wales. You know, but then you've got boys who've never been involved in football, don't know the arse from the elbow in terms of football, but they can pay 250 quid to go on a C licence, and then you can manage somebody. You know, and it just... And I think that's where a lot with this style of play comes from. I got these set ways of principle. I don't really know the game, but this is my way, and this is the way I'm playing going forward. And you see sides, they get caught out with it quickly, and that's what some clubs, that's where demise comes from, because they're so set and they won't change.
It's true. It's been my experience for years that, but there just seems to be more and more of it. And when was it, Rod? When we first came into Llanrymni, we don't say who it was, but I wasn't going to be the manager. We basically agreed that someone was going to come in and manage the team, someone who had a bit of connection with the area. And when we said, who's your coaching team going to be, he had an 18-year-old and a 19-year-old. And he said, oh, they're good, they're great coaches. I said, I don't doubt that. I'm sure they can put on a cracking session. But when you're 2-0 down, away from home, up in Aberfan, on a wet Saturday, who are you going to turn to for an opinion that might help? and he's, they know the game. And I'd be like, that's not possible at 18. Like, it's just not.
Yeah, it's not. And like I say, you've just got to find ways to win football matches. And for me, I'd much rather lump the ball long all day long. If you win a game 1-0, it's the best feeling in the world, rather than I see managers coming off 3-0 down. They're doing interviews on social media. We were brilliant in our pressing today, or football was excellent. We played these lovely patterns of play, but we lost 3-0. What's the purpose of it all, And there's little bits of it, and of course, if you see that 9-10 weeks and you won 9 and lost that 1, and you can sort of understand it, but yeah, you've got to be adaptable, and I think that's where sides are successful, And I also think a lot of sides, they lose. You see it at professional football, and I like to do it myself. I want people to look at me and think, yeah, that's his side. I am big, I am aggressive on the side of the football pitch, and I want my side to try and play like that as well, But sometimes as well, you let the players just go and play the game. If they can find a way to go and win a football match, that's not the way you want them to play. Who cares? And in particular, when you're looking further up the leagues, some of the players, they know a bit more than you as well, so you've just got to let them get on with it and find the solutions themselves, because, and again, it goes back to the badges. You can overcoach sometimes. I'm not really a stereotypical tactics manager. I'll give the boys how I want to play, but I'm not spending 30 minutes going through a tactic board either, because I think sometimes you can have a little bit too much information. We'll go through stuff in training, but then let the players work it out themselves.
Do you know what? I mean, I coach at Pencoed now, which is great for me. I just do a bit of coaching, do my bit on a Saturday, and I don't have to deal with them during the week, even though they're actually a good bunch of lads. But dealing with players throughout the week was the thing that finished me in the end. It's impossible for my personality, impossible nowadays. And but that's one thing that when I went into Pencoed, I kind of said to them, the coaches, because fresh eyes see so much, don't they? I just said, guys, we're giving them too much information. They don't know what to do. So, but to be fair, the whole coaching team, because they're all good coaches in their own right, but where you've just got used to something and you can't see, and a fresh pair of eyes comes in and can just see something straight away. And we don't give them any more than 3 things to think about now during a game. Because if they could process 10, they wouldn't be paying in tier 4 for Pencoed for no money. Exactly. And that's no disrespect to them. There's such a good bunch of lads and some real good players. And they've really responded to that as well. They've appreciated having less talk and more, let's go and do it. Do you know what I mean?
And that goes back to what we said about I said about the managers as well. Sometimes players want to play for a manager. They don't just want to play for somebody who knows the game really well and coach it brilliant. They want somebody who gets their arm around them and feel a bit of love. And I do feel Welsh football's starting to miss that a little bit, because when you look at the top level of Welsh football now, and I say the top level, tier 1, 2, 3, I think the standard is strong. But I'm feeling further down the chain now. We look at Gwent County Leagues this year, Gwent Premiers is called now. I think the winners of the first division, second division, and the third division, they lost 1 game between them all. Right. And you're thinking, how have leagues at that level become that uncompetitive, where 2 sides have won the league without losing a game, and the other league has only lost 1 game? And I know the sides, they're good sides, don't get me wrong, but you see sides then down there, they're just dwindling off because they haven't got managers who can try and galvanise a squad. They've got some coaches coming in. Like say, the younger lads coming in, there's sides in the Gwent County, they've got 23, 24-year-old managers, it's tough. And sometimes when you're bringing those players in at that level, commitment's an issue these days for players. Players ringing you at 12 o'clock on a Saturday saying, I can't make it, and when you're 23, 24, to try and find solutions to that is bloody hard.
What's your favourite reason, Welsh League level, we won't go back to Ynysddu days, what's your favourite reason for someone pulling out on a match day?
Christ, I had a player this year with an infected finger. Why that stops you playing football, I'll never ever know. Right. It is going back to my Ynysddu days, but it's still be my favourite. He couldn't come to football because he had to wait for a sofa to be delivered. I was thinking, hang on, when's the sofa being delivered? Between 8 and 12. Football's 3 o'clock. Yeah, but I need to put it together. I need to do something. Right. Oh God,
You've got a favourite, Rod, from our time?
We've had so many, haven't we?
I'll come to you now. I'll tell you a cracker we had this year at Pencoed, right? There's this lad. He's an absolute diamond of a lad. But his missus was pregnant and the baby was due in about a month or something like that. But he's one of these people, right? And I've said this to his face, so Deck, I'm not slagging you off behind your back. But he's one of these people that thinks he's the only person that's ever had a kid. Right? So it was about a month before the birth. And he scored the winner against Port Talbot the one week. We beat them 1-0 at home. Top corner, left foot, screamer. There's videos of him that night down in Pencoed Social Club. He's on people's shoulders, pissed up and all this, right? And the following week he's not playing because his mother-in-law's coming over. So he doesn't feel he can leave. She's coming over because they're going to paint the baby's bedroom.
Yeah, it's,
I mean,
honestly,
that's good level, isn't it?
Yeah,
I can't remember I can't remember which club it was, but one we've had where one of the players couldn't come, and the reason he couldn't come was because his missus had locked him in the house.
Ah, that's right.
I can't remember what club that was at. Well, actually, there's two. There's that one. I won't name the names. That was one whereby we had a phone call that he couldn't get out of the house, couldn't even climb out the window, couldn't get out of the house. And the other one was someone we named in the squad didn't turn up, and then we found out he'd been arrested.
Honestly.
Yeah.
There's all the biggest one coming up now. At Abertillery, had a player couldn't come because he just had an ear transplant in Turkey. We've had somebody this year who's had their teeth done in Turkey, so they couldn't play.
Yeah,
And it's
tattoo.
And it was training this year, not a game granted, but a player couldn't come on training on the Tuesday because he hadn't packed for all day on the Saturday. So he had a night off training. You know.
When I was at Cumbrae Celtic, we did this Christmas tournament with the academy, and it was a brilliant day. Don't get me wrong, but it was on a Friday. And it was a bit of a booze up, but they never lost a match after that tournament on a Saturday. So they'd have a booze up on a Friday, everyone home by 10. And they'd always win Saturday because the camaraderie of the Friday would carry them through. And it got so big, this one lad was, he said, I'm not going to come training tonight on a Thursday because I'm going to go and buy a new shirt for tomorrow. And when
That's great,
you're
isn't
like 18, 19 years old, and he was such a good lad, such a good player. And when you sort of pull him on it the next day and going, what makes you think? I actually said to him, why don't you lie to me? Why don't you tell me you've got to work? Don't tell me that. And he didn't know. He couldn't understand why I was so upset with him.
We've added so many little things like that this year. And you think, like, say, just don't tell me the truth, for God's sake, give me something.
Yeah.
But they think it's normal behaviour. And like I say, the younger generation these days, I think football becomes something that they'll do if they've got nothing else on. You know, so they chuck all these excuses in. And sometimes I just sit there and just laugh at them. But I'm also, you know, with the players, they're amateur footballers or part-time footballers, whatever you want to call them, and they got lives outside of football as well. And, you know, even going out on Friday night, you know, I don't put rules into boys. You can't go out on a Friday night. My rules are you play well on a Saturday afternoon. So if you go out on a Friday night, that hinders you, on the side next week. That's your responsibility, not mine, you know. So it's, you know,
it's not just men, you know. I mean, Rod, what are the under-14s, your boys? You coaches, well, like you say about it, but the kids in your team are the same as kids.
Yeah,
it's not just men and women.
It's hard work, yeah. My boys under 14s going into 15s. It's just everything with it. It's just when I was that age, when we were that age, it'd be a case of like, I remember playing out here where I was in bed for 2 days being sick. Our dad saying, "You're not playing." I'm like, "No, shut up, I'm playing."
Yeah.
You know, playing and being sick beside the goals while I'm playing, but.
You're probably being sick because you've been drinking Strongbow on your paper round, to be fair. But
It might be a couple of years.
His life in general, though, isn't it, Christ? You think of the things going back 20 years ago that you just get on with things, but these days, you know, it's just life in general. Kids are off school for 3 days now if they've been a little bit sick for 1 day, you know, and that just rolls into football as well. I think it's a different generation.
It's also that bit in there where you said, like, the desire to play. Where you play your game for school, then you go and play for your team. Play 2 games. If someone plays on a Wednesday night now, they can't do anything till Friday.
Yeah, there is a lot. And that's the one thing I love with Treowen. Like, our reserves has been a struggle, but our reserves are pretty much our under-19s. And they've played every Saturday, every Sunday this year. I think most of the players have played around 60 games this season, you know, and they've put a side out every single week. And last year, our reserves, I think they finished on 3 points. They finished on 28 this year. So and I think the oldest playing in size 21. You know, a couple of first team boys have dropped down to help them out, but we've only had a squad of 18 in the first, so it's hard to drop players down.
Yeah.
But and on a Sunday, I always say under 18s, under 19s football's bloody hard because, you know, it's like girls and drink come in to play on a Saturday night, so again, and they on a Saturday, on a Sunday's difficult, and some of the boys have rocked up 1:30 in the dressing rooms and stuff, but they still go out, and to be fair to them, they come bloody close to win the league this year. They done really well.
Yeah.
They finished second in the end, and they were pushing Newport City all the way, and Newport City, a fantastic young side. they were pushing them all the way, and last year I think they finished 4th on bottom in the league.
Right.
So the turnaround.
It's getting there.
Yeah, it's massive. And like say, this is what I'm trying to say to players now when we're trying to attract them. Don't look at the club now. You need to try and see, and we're trying to present where we're going.
Yeah.
And I've only been there for 12 months, and Treowen years ago, the pitch was dog rough for years.
I was going to ask you about it, and do you get crowds now?
Yeah,
success brings crowds normally.
Yeah, throughout the season it's grown. You know, when I was going to the back end of last season, so I knew I was taking over towards the beginning of April, and Treowen still had 12 games left, so I went to pretty much every game, and you'd be see 30 or 40 people there. No, nobody really wanted to be there.
Last time we were there was a long time ago. What is now Newport City, Llanwern in the old 3rd division. So that's a long time. That's probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, so it's,
yeah.
you know, it's, look, the place needs brightening up. It needs a bit of work done. But I got announced at the end of April, the beginning of April. I think the last game on the pitch last year was the 31st of May. I think the first team played 8 games in May last year, you know. So the first thing I said, you've got to sort the pitch out, because the pitch has been crap for years. But there was also never a need really to do the pitch. It sort of sufficed, and even going back to the old Welsh League days, Treowen used to have a load of games called off. Everybody got up on a Tuesday night. Treowen would be bottom of the table. Season to finish would be 10th of the table. You know, so it suited them.
There used to be a theory back in the day that they'd call games off on purpose to make you go up there on a Tuesday night.
I heard
Whether
those
that's
series.
true or not,
I've heard those series, and I wouldn't doubt it at all. You know, it's, again, that's part and parcel of football. Clubs find ways of doing things, and I said, if we were going to play, I want the pitch properly, because like I told you when we walk around outside, facilities are important for players. But the season, say the last game was the reserves on the 31st of May. The week later, the Ardell League announced it's starting on the 23rd of July. So you got 7 weeks to do something on a pitch, which just isn't feasible. So we had to grin and bear it, but the committee, the work they've done this year has been unbelievable. We've had new dugouts built, 13-seater dugouts, new security fencing, because where Treowen's pitch is, there's quite a few villages around it, but you can get the pitch 4 or 5 different places. Yeah. So in the summer, the amount of kids that's up there drinking and stuff, and the reason they're there, because if the police come from one area, they can scarper off in 4 or 5 different other areas.
Right.
So we had to put security fencing in, which has taken us a long time, but they've worked their guts off to try and do it, and it's been done. The pitch, as I said, has been ripped up since the end of the season. We stopped playing on the 29th of April this year, so that's been levelled off. We've got another stand going in a couple of weeks' time. It's another 150 seats to meet the Tier 2 criteria. New pitch side barriers going in. We bought new ground maintenance equipment. The clubhouse was done 2019, so that's really nice. We're applying for grants now to do the changing room, so there's a lot of work going on up there. But I think some people expect, well, I come up here 6 months ago and I can't see a huge change. I can see little bits, but you can't change that amount of stuff, especially when football's being played as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, the long-term dream for us is try and get a 3G pitch up there, and I know people have a perception around 3G, and I'd rather play on grass. But when you've got a club with 47 sides, the finances involved in us.
That's right.
We own Bush Park now. We've taken the lease off the council, which is great. But this year we've had our first reserves, 18s and 19s, all playing on that pitch. Yeah. So it's 80 games a season being played on there. Yeah. And we can't let none of the kids going on there. The girls' side, so we can't let them if they got a big game coming up and now they try and get on there. And you then think all the other grounds that we don't own, the rental fees for them, training facilities, it costs us thousands and thousands every year. So the best way for us to be sustainable is getting a 3G pitch up there.
Yeah, I see that.
But the costs of those are also not cheap, you know, and there's a couple in the area, but they're multi-use sports facilities that also don't meet Tier 3 criteria and stuff, so you can't really use them. So, but again, that's probably 5 to 10 years down the line, but it's something the club are aiming towards, because we want to try and get as much back there as we can. And we talked earlier on about the investment in the clubs through the clubhouses and the finances that brings in. So the more sides we can have playing at Bush Park, the better it is for the club, you know.
We had a question on Twitter, so I want to make sure I ask it to you. Do you ever use the steps for training? No?
No.
No.
So to be fair, when I went there last year, my pre-season sessions are hard, but we talked a bit about players these days. I think if you turn up and have players run around the football pitch for an hour, you'll lose the interest very quickly.
Agree,
so we don't.
And they won't come next time.
No, I said we do a bit of running. And to be fair, the boys have given us some fitness plans to try and get a bit of an head start. We've been off now for 5 weeks, so they've been banging the runs out. And I've said to them, if you can do a bit yourself now, and again, when you're going into Tier 2, you expect boys to be in good condition anyway.
You would hope so, wouldn't you?
When you come back into training, they'll only be ball work. Don't get me wrong, and I'm a firm believer as well. Some of the stuff that we do with the ball is 10 times harder than running around a football pitch as well. You get far more out of it. So no, we don't use the steps, but they have been threatened a couple of times as a punishment.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to years ago. That would have been seen the norm. But you tell a player to do that these days, they'll just look at you stupid. You'll never see it again.
I did laugh when I read the question, because as I say, it's about 10 years since I've been to Treowen. And I remember, they're severe, those steps, aren't they?
They are, but, you know, all I've had all year is, you're doing really well up there, but what's the point? Because you're not going to get promoted. You can't get promoted on that ground. And I asked them why. They said, well, you got steps. What's your point?
Yeah.
I mean, why can't you get promoted because steps? And then you go to the Bernabeu, the biggest stadium in the world now. They got steps going from the change room to the pitch here. Granted, not 54 of them, but
when you won the league and you were confirmed as being promoted and stuff like that, I was like, Christ, they must have done some work since last time I was there, because there's no way it would have come blind. You lose touch sometimes, because the teams that are doing well aren't necessarily the ones that are getting it right behind the scenes. Sometimes there's someone that's not doing very well, but they're getting it right behind the scenes, and then once you get it right behind the scenes, things get better on the pitch, don't they?
You know, to be fair, Chairman Gary, when I went there last year, he was involved in so much in the football, the compliance, the clubhouse, everything. And the first thing I said to him, just stay away from the football, because there was other things I needed doing, because he was just so busy, couldn't focus on anything. He was spinning so many plates and not really focusing on anything because he was just too busy. So anything above under 16s level, I take full control of now. And it's just giving him the time to go and really get stuff right off the pitch. But also, you know, when I was at Abertillery, Abertillery, Treowen, I've gone through the Tier 2 application for all of them, and the ground requirements are not as bad as what people are. It's the administration side which catches a lot of people out. But yeah, we have done work up there, and Christ, you go to some of the Tier 2 grounds now, we're not going to be anywhere near that. But we also want to get to it, but there's a catch-22 now this year, because we want to make the facilities really nice. But I also don't want the away sides coming up. They think, oh, I'm looking forward to playing on this pitch. You want them walking up the steps. And when I went to Abertillery, the first thing I said, make the pitch as big as possible. I'll make us the fittest side in the league.
Where were you playing when you were there?
At Abertillery.
You were playing at the Thursdays?
At Penny Pound, yeah.
Wow.
So we said, make the pitch. I want to make the pitch as big as possible, because exactly that. I want to make the boys as fit as possible, and I wanted sides turning up the ground thinking, I don't want to be on there today. I don't want to be going on there.
Standing in the one corner flag, looking at the other corner flag, going, that's miles away.
We were with Porth, and it was just after Christmas, and we were either top or second in the old second division. And half-time, I said, that centre-half is garbage, right? Let him have it up to the halfway line. Don't even, because he'll just kick it back to us. And it's like the last minute, we've got it back to 2-2 after a poor performance. And this centre-half has come near the halfway line, and he's just hoofed the thing, right? But it's so far to the goal that the centre-halves are thinking, oh, that's running through to the keeper. And by the time they've realised that's not getting to the keeper, the centre-forward's in and we've lost 3-2.
That's massive.
Enormous pitch.
I remember I played there for Ynysddu pre-season friendly. It was when Aberbargoed Town reformed, and we went up there in a pre-season, like a last-minute thing. They looked for somebody who got me. We went with Ynysddu. Went up about 12 players. I was playing up front on my own. And we talked about centre-halves. 2 centre-backs dropped in all game. They made the pitch as big as possible. After 5 minutes, we were 2-0 down. I just looked at myself and I said, please, boys. Not that I was boiling hot day. Don't have me run. They beat us about 12-0. I just thought, this pitch.
Who did we play up there with Cross Acadiog?
What?
Up at Abergavenny.
We played on the Cup. We played Newport County.
That's right. Gwent Cup final. So we've got up there on the day. You've gone out to have a look at the pitch. And we used to play with wing-backs, didn't we, in that team? And him and the other coach have looked at me and gone, we can't ask wing-backs to play on this pitch. We're gonna have to go like 4-5-1 or something. Yeah. Because you can't ask wing-backs to do 120-yard doggies all game.
Honestly, it's huge. Well, to be fair, when I left Ynysddu, we got to a stage where I knew we couldn't go any further. So it wouldn't have been much to pull me away, but I felt Aberbargoed was one of those ones. Right. It just has a bit of an X factor when you walk. It's a proper football ground and you walk in and think, this is proper,
I agree with that, yeah.
They approached, we had a good conversation. I went there. Typically, when I went there, they were bottom of the Welsh League second division at the time. The remit was to stay in the league. We won 4 of our first 7, which they'd only won 2 all season, and then COVID come. You know, so it just killed it for me because I brought a new coaching team. I brought some players in. Then we thought it was going to start as soon as COVID. I think COVID was like the March. We thought it was going to start in the August.
I know, it kept teasing us,
we brought players in that summer. Then we didn't play for 12 months, so by the time that started, and off the field, it's always been very political because the football ground is owned by the Thursdays Trust, and the football club is a totally different entity. So it was always a battle over the pitch. And the day I left Abergavenny, the day after the whole committee stepped down as well. So it was just a tough time, and I loved it up there. But I say COVID killed it off for me.
So was it? So Were you there at the end of the COVID restrictions, or did you go during?
No, I was there at the end of the COVID restrictions. We went to start pre-season, and there was so many wranglings over the pitch, you know, and it was even to an extent then I was turning up training, there was players coming to training that other people were inviting there, and I was like, who's this? You know, and there was a lot going on off the field, and I just sort of knew it. The time wasn't right. COVID had pretty much killed it. I wish I went a little bit earlier. But to be fair, they brought Sean Morton in after me, they changed the whole committee, and they went and won the league.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I'd done a lot of things up there. We got them through Tier 2. We won some grants for some ground maintenance equipment and stuff, which I was heavily involved with. So I left them in a better place. And like I say, the remit when I went, they was keeping them in the league because it was at the time when the Ardell leagues were structured anyway.
Yes.
So we had to make sure we didn't get relegated out of that second division, which we did. And so I genuinely believe, I think it was 9 games left in the league and 8 of them were at home. So I felt we were going to want a really strong run, and it really would have put us in a good position for the next year. But like many clubs, that COVID period was just a nightmare, you know. And
absolutely.
when I left Abertillery, then I was adamant I was going to have a break. that break lasted a day or two, and I'm thinking I'm done. You know, I'm bored out of my mind.
We've done that a couple of times, haven't we?
Yeah, honestly, we will.
Yeah.
And when I left, I had a phone call off Lee Tom. I said, Abertillery, he was managing Abertillery. He said, look, when you come in with me, and I said, not being assistant to anybody, it just isn't me at all.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I know, but I think...
Why did you say that? Why do you think...
At the time, when I left Ynysddu, I was very strong-minded and just felt that I had to be number one.
Right.
And the pressures of a managerial role, they are, even at this level, it's hard going because people think you just turn up on a Saturday in a training session. You don't. It's pretty much a full-time job, you know. So I thought, I need to be in control. But me and Tom had a really good chat about it, and he said, just come alongside me, you can do whatever you want, but there'll be elements that I can teach you, and we work together. And I thought, you know what, maybe is the right thing for me to do. Just take a little bit of a backward step, share the load a little bit. And I went in with him, and honestly, it was the best experience I ever had.
Yeah?
Yeah, as I said to you earlier on,
So which season is this now? This is 22?
21, 22.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
Owen good enough there?
Yeah. Owen, well, I'll tell you a little story about Owen. So I had a lot of conversation with Tomo. I left Abergavenny during pre-season, early on in the pre-season. So I had 2 weeks conversations with Tomo. I said, look, let me just get my head clear. I don't think it's going to be for me being a number 2, but let's have a chat. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go for it. It's quite close to my house, lighten my load a little bit, and I can spend a bit of time trying to learn a little bit. Because when I went to Abergavenny, I went in December, and that was the hardest thing I'd ever done. The side who were bottom of the table, taking over somebody mid-season where you've got to go and try and get players immediately, trying to attract players to a relegated side. You have with no pre-season to implement what you want to implement. It was tough. And I was young at the time as well. I think it was only 36, 37, so it was hard to try and get buy-in from experienced Welsh players. Say it happened, we got there, but I thought, never take over the side mid-season again, do it at the start of the season. So me and Tom had a lot of conversations, and Abertillery at the time, they'd had a good couple of years. They won the Gwent County First Division. They went to the Welsh, I think they finished 6th year COVID kicked in. So their pre-season then after COVID was tough. They were struggling to get players in, and they had a tough spell. So he said, look, come in. They knew I could bring a lot to the table, so we had a chat. I thought, you know, I'm going to go for it. I wanted to work with Tom. I knew him from previous games that we've played against him, and I say he's a really, really good guy. And I started with them, my first day with them was the day they played Cross-y-Ceiliog. Opening day of the season, Welsh Cup game. Over in Cross-y-Ceiliog, no changing rooms allowed, all changing on the side of the pitch and stuff because of COVID. And Owen snapped his Achilles in that game. And when we'd set up the season, I thought, Joe, I went there, had a look around and said, I'll go and see what it's like, and we'll start working from the next day. But Owen had a bad ankle, but as a centre forward, it was everything I loved. Just a backing ram, you know, and held the ball up, but also a really good player at that as well. You know, he wasn't just a physical centre forward; he could play. And he was sort of limping around the game against Cross-y-Ceiliog. He knew he wasn't right, and he'd had that injury for a while. And I never forget it. You heard a crack, and he's turned around, and he wants to kill some young kid. And I remember him saying, "You little bastard!" And this kid is just like, what do you want about?
Well, that's the thing. When you snap an Achilles, it feels like someone's hit you with a cricket bat in your Achilles.
He felt the kid had raked him, but this boy is 10 yards away from him, and the kid's petrified. Owen's a big lump, like.
Yeah, he's a big boy, Owen.
A couple of the boys then have instantly reacted, thinking what's going on, and Owen's gone down across the club and he's nobody near him, and he's put his foot down, but he snapped his Achilles. So it was horrible because, you know, I was looking at it thinking, you know what, there's this stuff. We had Richie Crease centre half, James Young in midfield, Dan Paul centre half, so we had some really good players there. But Owen was really important to what we were doing because that was what they set up. But to be fair, I went there, that was my first day, and it galvanised the boys a little bit. I think, Christ, we seriously were bringing him in. They knew I was going to bring a couple of players in, and we won 11 out of our first 12 games, I think. So we went on a brilliant run. After Christmas, we found it difficult, but we lost the league to a point to Abertillery, and we went into the playoff against Ynysddu, and it was the best thing that happened to us losing our playoff, because we were nowhere near good enough to go up into the Cymru South. We had a brilliant season. We punched above our weight.
Right.
But I remember the day after, I rung the players and said, trust me, we'll win the league next year. And they were, I'm not too sure about that. Dan Paul and James Young in particular. But James ended up going to Abertillery because they won the league and they offered him to go to Cymru South, and we couldn't take that opportunity away from him. But the following season, we started really well. But then on the flip side, the previous season in January, because it was still transfer windows that time, we signed 6 or 7 players. James Young was one of them, coming back from Abertillery, and we were brilliant. We went on a run that risk of quite a few points clear, and we hunted them down. We beat Treowen away 2-1, which was, I think, a 96-minute winner, which was a massive game. We went and won the league. So, and funny enough, we won it at Treowen, which was mad. I think 450.
We always sort of keep an eye out for Owen, don't we? Owen good enough.
He's a good lad.
So
I love Goody.
Me and Rod, we went up. We must have went up watching him at Abertillery 3 or 4 times when they were in Division 3, we were in Division 2 across the Ceiliog. And we spent 2 years pursuing him. And we finally got him. And 6 weeks later, we got sacked.
One of those it is. Typical, you chase a player for so long. And that was a brilliant lad as well. But we dipped him in a couple of times because he wanted to try and get back in it, but he was never right, and he couldn't get back to the level.
It's a horrendous injury.
Yeah, and he was playing. Then he ended up going down to Ynysddu, and he's still doing bits for Ynysddu now. But I think he's in and out of the side where I think the injury's still playing up, and of course playing on that 3G. But yeah, it was a brilliant time. And Treowen, he was more of the manager up there. I was more of the coach, and I learned a lot off him. I think he learned a lot off me as well, and we still speak regularly about him today. One of the best guys I've ever worked with in football, and I loved my time at the club. But the reality was the club just wasn't ready to go to Cymru South.
Right.
When we went up there, we had no playing budget. And the biggest problem, and Treowen, we'll feel the same this year, there's no Welsh Prem club anywhere near us. So to try and pick up younger lads, to try and bring them in. But also, there's not many Cymru South sides around either. You've got Cwmbran Celtic and Newport City, and they're just a different beast altogether these days. So even to try and drag players who have Cymru South experience from other clubs is hard. And
it is,
you look at down Port Abertillery, you've got Abertillery, Trevelyan,
it's a hotbed, isn't it?
Goitre, just got relegated now. You can throw a blanket over all of them. So if one player's not happy at that club, you can pick him up. So even now, we're looking a bit further afield to try and get some boys in, or you're bringing boys up from the Ardal League. It's hard to bring them boys in with Cymru South experience. And we brought a couple in at Abertillery, but it was just tough. And if you look at Treowen this year, they had a really good squad, but look, I'm not going to take anything away from them. They had a brilliant brilliant season, but they start the season, they had a lot of games. I think they played Penrith Khyber earlier on, they played Lambert Major earlier on. Games that you'd look at and think, we can pick up points. At Abertillery, our first game was Abertillery away on a Friday. We had Ammanford away on a Tuesday night. Then Britain Ferry home. Then Cambrian home. Then Llanelli home in a cup. And then another one of the big boys away. I can't even remember who it was. And you look at
Abertillery away from home on a Tuesday night in Ammanford.
I got home up at 12.
Cheers.
I got home up at 12, and you're looking at the first six.
Secretary's done a worldie.
You're looking at the first 6 fixtures, thinking where your points coming from, and we played Pontardawe home. We had a run then after that where we had Pontardawe, Cwmbran Celtic, Lambert Major, and you're thinking that's where you got to go. And we played Pontardawe at home. They battered us absolutely, and they were down there. And Gary Taylor, manager at the time, and his sides play football, and they battered us. But we drew 2-2, and we scored late on, and it galvanised us a little bit. We beat Lambert Major, but then we played Cwmbran Celtic. We had a bad day. They battered us. Their front three of Bonthron, Meechan, and Lewis Isles, they just ripped us to shreds. They beat us 4-0, and it was like, we're in for a rough ride here.
So was that... What sort of led to the end of you moving on from Abertillery?
Yeah, well,
was it that desire to get back as a number one? Or?
No. It was at Abertillery. I was number one at that time because of the criteria. I went to manager. Tom was
right.
But I always felt I was joint manager with him. We do everything together. And I would tell him things we wanted to do. He would do it. So I never ever felt like I was assistant or anything. We worked brilliantly together. But it was always it was a team effort. But at Abertillery, we just weren't competing. We went on to Llanelli and we lost 9-0. It was my worst experience of football. But it was. Crashed on the M4. I think we got down there 8 o'clock, up at 7 kick-off. We had a delayed kick-off till 8:15. The last thing you want is playing Llanelli with a 15-minute warm-up. To be fair, they had boys coming from Cardiff who felt the same thing. We had 2 of our centre-halves out, we had 2 midfielders out, and we needed our best 11 on the pitch every week going down there.
Yeah, we've been places
And
like that.
we were 20 minutes in, we were doing really well. We had a couple of chances on account, and one of their centre-half had gone through the back of our centre-forward with an head. Nothing malicious, but he's head on head, he's hurt him. Our centre-forward's out of it on the pitch. I'm screaming at our physio on the other side of Stephanie, get him back on the pitch, or get him off, because we need to make a change. And Trinity, a good side, they knew what they were doing. Well, hang on, we haven't got a centre-forward here. Let's chuck another 2 boys into midfield. And the centre-half has stepped into midfield to go from 25 yards. We go 1-0 down, 25 minutes. By half-time, we were 4-0 down. And I'm thinking, Christ, where do we go from here? So we lost 9-0. I offered my resignation that night, because I just felt it was the right thing to do. We'd been humiliated, you know, it was horrible. And we took 100 fans down to watch us. It was horrible. The club said, not a chance of you going anyway. Don't think anything of that. And it just kept spiralling. I was doing a lot of stuff off the field. Brilliant club, but I just felt I couldn't offer him anymore.
Right.
You know, and my work was getting really busy, and I spoke to Tom and I said, look, my time. And I brought a guy in, Josh Anderson, who was to work alongside us, so I knew I'd set something up to work with Tom on. To be fair to Josh, he'd done a good job, and then they got a couple of results, and I thought they needed a fresh change. But the club knew it was going to be a one season. It was a challenge, a huge challenge, and we knew at the time when I left in December, we'd won the grant for the stand, but we couldn't put it into like April time. So we knew we were fulfilling the criteria, and it was... And again, naively, when I left it, I thought, you know, I need a break. And the same bloody thing happened. I went to watch Treowen in Aberbargoed. Just 'cause I wanted to go watch a game. And that day, Aberbargoed put a license, advert out for the job. Somebody local, B licence, blah, 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 blah. And everybody was like, you're going to Aberbargoed? He goes, I don't even know what you're on about. And the advert read is for me, pretty much. And I thought, no, I'm not going there. Treowen was where I wanted to go. So I went up to watch Aberbargoed and Treowen. And the next day, then, I went to watch Aberbargoed and Treowen. No links whatsoever, just go and watch another game. Thought, whilst I'm off, try and get as much football in as I can to try and see what I want to do going forward. And as I went there, I bumped into John Lewis, who was the Aberbargoed chairman.
Yeah.
And he called me straight away. So he's having a chat. And I know of John, but I've never really had a conversation with him. And I got on quite well with him, and there's a lot of people who've got an opinion of John in Welsh football. And, you know, he's controversial. He speaks his mind, very similar to myself. And I had a conversation. He said, I wanted to play for the job. And I was like, well, I don't know if I will, but I appreciate the interest. We'll go from here. And I spoke to Treowen, and it was clear that it weren't happening with Treowen. And I had another week, and I thought, you know what, fuck it, let's just go for it. So I went for it. And I went for the interview, and they absolutely grilled me. But I also loved that, because it felt like it was the right environment to be in. Because
And what league were they in at the time?
in the Ardell League. You know, they got promoted out of Gwent County back into the Ardell League. They were mid-table at the time. But John was very ambitious with the club. He brought them back out, and they'd lost 6 or 7 games already that season. And to get promoted, they had pretty much win every game. And he said, do you think you can get us out of the league this year? And I'm like, you know, there's 12 games left. You're going to have to win every one of them. But we had a good squad. It is possible. So went through the interview stage, brought me in, and we won our first 5 games on a bounce. One of those being over Caldicott, scored a 96 minute run. You know what Caldicott's like. It's a bloody tough place to go and win football matches.
Yeah.
So we won 2-1 over there. So I thinking, you know, we're on to something here. And we had Risca. Risca were 3rd in the table. If we won, May was on. So Tree Thomas were pretty much going to win the league. Newport City were flying at the time as well. But I thought, you know what, we can go and do it. But we lost to Risca. And John was on holidays at the time. So we lost to Risca. A couple of mistakes there at the game. We were the better side, but we didn't take our chances. They took theirs. So a couple of mistakes of ours, and we lost. So it was pretty much over. John come back from holidays. I spoke to him on the Friday night about things for the next season. Really good conversation with him. And we played over Dundee. And, you know, the boys were on decent money at Aberbargoed, but there was always a belief they didn't want to be there. But we played over Dundee, and it's one of those ones as a manager. We beat them 1-0, and it's one of those ones as a manager you walk off here thinking, I enjoyed that. They were throwing their bodies on the line. It was a proper team performance. Nobody could have looked at them boys and you don't want to be here. They were brilliant. I'll never forget it. I was in the shower. I always have a debrief for the players after the game, let them have their shower. Once they're all done, I'll go in the shower. So I'm in the shower on my own, and I could hear John in the changing room. Didn't think anything of it. He always used to come in the changing room after the game. And he announced to the boys that he was stepping down and leaving. And I'm like, right, don't know what's going on here.
So stepping down and leaving as chairman?
The whole club, everything. And he was the financial back of the club, the main sponsor, done everything off the field. Okay. Pretty much Mr. Aberbargoed. So I go back into the clubhouse and a couple of people go, don't worry.
This is like, what, 5 or 6 games out from the end of the season?
About 10. About 10.
Right.
But like I said, the night before, I'd had a conversation about what we were going to do for next season. He put loads of money into the pitch and stuff. So we went to the clubhouse and I said, don't worry about that. he's just had a bit of a tough time, he'll be fine. So I didn't ring him that night, thought, let him have a bit of rest. Spoke to him on a Sunday, and he said, look, Ben, I'm so sorry to do this, but I'm done. And it was a lot of off-the-field things, and he just felt his time in the club was done, and overnight pulled. And a couple of players left straight away because they were no longer getting paid, and it was tough. It was really tough, but it was a really good group of youth boys, and we brought them through. We got through the season, but I had a meeting on the Wednesday after it happened, and the first thing the committee said is going to be £1,000 fine if we pull out the league now. And I'm like, why are we pulling out the league? We still got a squad, we got a youth side, but that was because John were leaving, they felt they couldn't continue. So I pretty much handed my resignation in there, and I said, look, I'll stay till the end of the season, but I can't be at the club where you're talking about, let's fold. I mean, that can't happen. And look, a lot of people have criticised John for it. I'll never criticise him for doing it. Everybody's got to do their own things, and I would say I love working with him because he put the pressure on. He put the pressure on, he knew what he wanted, but I also thrived under that because you knew you had to do your best. So I really enjoyed working with him. A good guy, I spoke to him. And look, everybody has got to leave for their own reasons and stuff, and he left. And the club then, after I announced my resignation, we got through the games. We had a terrible time of it. We were losing games left, right and centre. We won 2 of them. But we were close with, I think, Newport City beat us in the 86th minute 1-0. Chepstow beat us 1-0. So we were doing great. The boys, I couldn't fault them. But halfway through that, we found out through the back door the club had announced the league they were resigning. Right. So to try and keep the players then was bloody solid. Impossible. They announced they were merging with Aberbargoed town but going down to the Gwent County 2nd Division. I was thinking, it's getting harder and harder. But whilst it was one of my toughest, it worked out so well because when I went to Treowen, I took 6 of the boys from there who didn't want to go down to that level. So if I went to Treowen earlier, they wouldn't have come. Yeah. So we brought them in, and some of them have been brilliant. Like
sometimes it works out for them.
Yeah, it worked brilliant. Like say, whilst some people will say you've jumped about clubs, I've been at 3 clubs for a long time. Well, I'll say 3, Treowen's one of them, a long time, and 2 of them have just been bad spells, but one of those is through COVID as well, It's just one of those, and I've always wanted to better myself, and at Treowen now I feel like I'm at a place where I've always said this will be my last club, whether that'll be the case. But that might be 10 years down the line,
I think there's obviously more than 2, but generally speaking, there's 2 types of people as managers, I think. And there's people that want to stay at one place, and I forget his name, I feel terrible, but he was at Penrith Khyber for 20 odd years. Yeah. Won 5 or 6 or 7 promotions, but got relegated 5 or 6 times and just stayed. So when the players all left and went somewhere else, he stayed. And when they came back, he was still there. And then there's other people, you referred to it earlier on, I was very much the same. Like, when you feel you've taken it as far as you can, plodding along isn't in you. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I was. And I think there's 2 different types here. And there's nothing wrong with the guy that's happy to get relegated 5 or 6 times and promoted 6 or 7 times. But there's nothing wrong with people that go 2 or 3 years absolutely flat out and then either want to change or just say, I don't think I can take this any further, maybe someone else. Neither is wrong.
Yeah, and that's it. At Abertillery, it was disappointing. And a couple of people took it badly. They still speak badly of me now, and I don't really care. But the right people at Abertillery, they contact me regular. The chairman speaks to me regular. Thankful for all the work I did. But also I done a lot of work off the field from as well. We talked about grants and stuff. I was heavily involved in winning the Welsh Ground Improvement Grant. So there's things up there. I've got my stamp on it, and the people involved in the club know that. But I'll struggle this year, and I've told the Treowen team I will struggle this year because when we're normally in football matches every week, I struggle because that's my motivation is winning games. And realistically, like the boys will ask me what's our target this year, and I told them win the title. And I'm not naive enough to say that we're going to win the league, but I expect us to go out to win every game. But I also believe if I say to the boys our goal is to stay in the league this year and scrape relegation, that's what we'll end up doing. The last 2 games of the season, we'll be fighting to stay in the league. So we'll just go out every game and try and win it. But I also know we're not going to win every game. So they're the ones that I find tough then, But as long as we got a plan in place, and I really do believe the club has got a plan to be sustainable in this league for the long term,
And that's the plan then.
Absolutely.
Is to establish yourselves as a regular.
The plan is to knock on the door at the Welsh Prem, And I do genuinely believe if we can get things right off the pitch, we can get in. I'm not saying we're going to get there in 5 years' time. It might be 10, it might be 15. But that's where we've got to try and aim to, and Gwent is crying out for a Welsh Prem side. I think we'll have one in the next 5 years. I think Newport City will be it. Newport City, the things they're doing off the field, and they get criticised galore, and they get thrown the term big time at them, and maybe they are, but it's nice to see a side doing things a little bit differently and trying their best, And I'll say it now on camera that Everybody criticised him for the pre-season tour to Valencia. There's not a player in Welsh football who would offer that would turn that down last year. Everybody would have done it, you know. So I won't criticise him for it. It's difficult to compete with them, but you know, you're not competing. I put a comment on Twitter a couple of days ago because the UEFA prize money came out, and I said it's brilliant for TNS to pick up 6 million, but how do the Welsh compete? And Mike Shrubshill, who's one of the part owners at Newport, replied, "Watch your space." So they clearly feel they can go and attack the big boys, and if they can, brilliant. Great, go for it, you know, and that will only benefit football in Gwent as well. Because as I said, you know, Barry have just released players now.
Bit different to our days at Newport City Road.
But again, you know, you boys have kept the club going. You've done really successful there. Sam has taken it on. And to be fair to Sam, you know, Sam is one of those.
He's another one from what I was saying though. You know, obviously people see Sam now, and you know he's had access to very good players and budgets for a couple of years. But you've got to remember how many years he stayed there, where you wondered what on earth the club was going to do.
Honestly, you know, the work that boy has done at Newport City is phenomenal. He kept it afloat on his own. And I'll stand on the touchline and I want to cave his head in. He wants to cave my head in. Honestly, we argue like but one of the nicest guys I met off the pitch. You know, he first person to contact me when we won the league. Offered all the support for this year, just a top guy, but he's also done a brilliant job with them. And you know, they beat us at Abertillery the year we didn't win the league. They beat us up at Abertillery to stay in the league their last game, and they beat us 1-0.
Yes.
And it was the most turgid game of football you'll ever see. But we were talking earlier on about philosophies and ways of playing. Sam made sure he did absolutely anything that day. They banked up, they were wasting time to win a football match. And I remember he was sheepish after the game, and don't apologise for that. You know,
absolutely not.
You've kept your side in the league, and that game was the making of Newport City. Because that summer then they got the investment and they've just grown and grown and grown.
We used to sit there, I don't know what they do after games now, but we used to go to the cricket pavilion.
That's they go back to,
And we were second in Division 3. We were a point behind Barry Town, because it was when they got double relegated. And we just had a big win. I think it was Riska.
Yeah, it was at home. That was around...
In the wind.
Yeah, Chorley.
Yes. So we had a corner and the wind was blowing into the goal. And Rod's very good friends with the lad that came on as sub in goal for Riska.
Yeah. He came straight off the bench, no warm-up, and the wind at Lamworth was howling.
It's the worst. Where was that? It was on the stadium.
Yeah.
It's the worst the wind is done.
Of course, as he's taking his kit off, I'm in the dugout next to him, and I really good friends with him, been to his brother's stag, his brother's wedding, and as he's put his gloves on, I'm just going, right, he knows I'm doing it. All corners, all in swinging, he won't catch a cold. He can't catch a cold. He can't catch a cold. Went in, first corner, boom, straight in.
First corner, we changed corner taker after Rodri had said that. Even though the guy that was going to take the corner would have hit an in-swinger. But it was just like, oh, he's in goals, change the corner taker, we'll do something different. And this corner came in and went straight in the top corner. No one touched it.
To be fair, they still do it now. They finished third in the league last year. Probably the most effective player is Richard Nice. He's
assist machine.
Well, I've never seen a player at that level take a corner with whichever foot he wants.
Yeah.
You know, he'll take an in-swinger, right foot, left foot, throw the ball absolute miles, but always with quality, whichever he's doing. And they use the pitch effectively. And like I say, the wind down is unbelievable. You go down in August, it'd be a gay force.
Well, do you remember we played, was it Llanelli, wasn't it? Llanelli at home on the when the howling gale. We were winning 4-0, and within about 2 minutes of the full time, it was 4-3. Because the wind was just howling, and our goalkeeper just,
they do it. I genuinely do think they'll get there. I really do. They're having a good crack at it. They're developing.
You're right about Gwent, though. It's been too long, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're not struggling at the moment. We've brought a couple of players in, but you know, you're looking. Barry just released 5 or 6 players, and you're thinking, I'd love to get a stab at them, but they're not really going to come up the valley. And there's no Welsh Prem side around who are releasing players that you can dip in. There's no Cymru South sides around us, but there's also no academies around us either. Like I said, we talked about the academy football, but Cumbrae, Celtic and Risk are going. They were always developing really good players, and now there's nothing. You look at Cambrai and you know the amount of players they're dragging out of their academy, you know, and but it's not only the players they're dragging out of their academy. You look at Anashia, they've won the playoff twice now, but I don't know the numbers, but it's probably 5 or 6 of those boys that come out of Cambrai academy.
Yes.
So they've dropped into that, but up with us, you know, Abergavenny got to Cymru South. Abergavenny's miles away from anything. They struggled to get the right players in, they got relegated. Abertillery done the same. I'm certain we won't get relegated this year because I think we have a good enough squad and we get the right players in. But to try and find the right players with that right level of experience is hard, and you're then going further afield, which means you've got to pay more money to get those players travelling, and it's tough. So, but Tree Thomas, Newport City, Cumberland Celtic, now ourselves, we're starting to grow it a little bit, but it's crying out for a Welsh Prem side, crying out for it, which is tough. It's hard to get them. Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. I think the biggest thing I see probably hindering Newport is the stadium, because they don't own it. So I think they need to try and find a way again their own ground. But look, they don't need me to tell them what to do. I'm sure they know. They're very clever guys. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm sure they got plans.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's what I was gonna say. I lost my train of thought. But when we were in the cricket pavilion and we just won this game that Rod was just describing about the corner, so we're second in the league and there's about 8 games left and it's looking good because it was 3 to go up.
Yeah.
And one of the committee, shall we say, anyone that knows our club will know what I'm talking about. Well, and he sort of sat there looking quite glum. I said, what on earth's the matter? How can you be down after a result like that? And he said, well, looks like we're going up then. I said, yeah, well, that's good, isn't it? And he went, we're going to have to pay for linesmen next year as well.
Yeah.
And he was serious.
I can imagine.
Because he just genuinely cared that much about the club's security and future that he was genuinely worried, how on earth are we going to pay for linesmen next year? Because there was just nothing there. Do you know what I mean? After they paid for the stadium.
It's bloody tough for Welsh football sides
so
to win.
To see them like they are now, and like I say, thankfully it's the same manager as well. They didn't just... there we are, get a new manager.
Like I said, nobody can criticise him. He's gone through the hard times as well, and he's got a little bit of, I wouldn't even say he's lucky, we worked hard to get what he is.
So when are you back?
Next Tuesday. Yeah.
So what date is that?
10th of June.
Oh, that's disgusting, isn't
It is, but, to be fair, we finished on the 29th of April, so the boys have had about 6 weeks off, which is probably enough, and you know what it's like, you have 2 months off, they come back, even worse condition, it's hard. But 10th of June, the season starts on 19th of July.
Yeah, it's getting earlier.
That's the problem, and the disparity between the leagues is we've gone up now, we want to get the right level of friendlies. Because the Ardell League finishes 3 weeks after the Cymru South, all the Welsh Prem sides have gone in terms of friendlies, they've already been dipped into it. The English leagues don't start till middle of August, so you've got a difference in times of pre-season. So trying to test yourself properly in pre-season against better sides, it's hard to find the right games. So we've got a lot of Ardell sides. We've got a couple of sides on the bridge, over the bridge coming over, which is good. But yeah, it's early. It's really early. But the boys they're ready for it. But you look at them this year, they played the playoff last week. Their next league season starting in 5 weeks' time, 5-6 weeks.
That's gross.
It's
gross.
But
I just always used to have the attitude. I wanted a break, but I wanted players to have a summer.
Yeah.
Sit in a beer garden, have weekends to yourself, and come back hungry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, what happened in Cardiff was a couple of sides started going back, like start of June. This is back when the season had started, like 12th of August or something. And then they'd go back training, so everyone else had to, because otherwise your players would end up training there, and then you might lose players.
Yeah.
So everyone's just going earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier.
Well, we've seen Gwent County sides are starting next week. That starts middle of August. So it's tough. But
that's a long pre-season.
Yeah, well, I seen Lantern Major got a friendly on Saturday.
I saw that.
So that even that, we don't look. Every manager's got a different way of doing it, but ours is. We are trying to condense our fixtures. I think our first fixtures are on the 28th of June, so we got 6 games, I think, in 3 week period. So we're going to try and condense them and use the squad well, because I also, my personal philosophy on is, if you start now, players can get bored before the start of the season, because there's a lot of time.
You need to have time off to miss it.
Yeah, and like I say, it's difficult. I think the Ardell League, our first game is going to be a cup game on the 19th, and then the league starts on the 26th of June, but I think the Ardell League have announced they're starting on the 19th of July. Goitra's last game was last week. So it's a quick turnaround.
It's one of the things with that as well. You've got the senior league starts, or the adults league starts so early in Gareth knows. One of my biggest frustrations with the kids football starts the first week of September.
Yeah, I know.
And I've tried so many times to try and say, start it sooner, because we get to December, and you play like my team played on his birthday, 16th of November, didn't play again until it was 14 Saturdays later.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We played our next game. So it's that whole thing with the season. They've started soon.
Yeah, all leagues. look, I'm a believer that in senior football, all leagues should start around a similar time. I know it's a bit differences because of facilities and pitch quality and stuff, but I think the Cymru South, it starts on the 26th of July and finishes the 14th of April.
Yeah.
You know, so it finishes really early. Players get a long enough break then, to be fair, you know.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
But it's when you're coming out of a league going into that, the disparity between the two leagues and the timeframes on them, it makes it difficult. And you look at the Gwent County leagues, Cumbraen are coming up now. I think Caerphilly will probably go into the South East. They finished earlier, but Cumbraen had a cup final 10 days ago. You know, they're back in the training next week. You know, and that's difficult for players then, you know. But when you get promoted, I'm sure the players want to get straight back into it as well. And to be fair, our boys, they're all ready for it. They've been out doing a bit of fitness. They're keeping themselves ticking over and they're looking forward to get going. So, yeah, next week we start back early.
Well, thanks for making time to meet us.
No, pleasure.
You've sandwiched us between your holiday and pre-season.
Oh no, it's like
starting.
anytime, as I said, any publicity for Welsh football, I'm a big fan of it. I try and watch all the club held. They contacted us a couple of weeks ago. We done a bit of an interview before a big game with Chepstow, and I think it's great the amount of people who try and actively get involved.
We've come across so many characters and interesting people and successful people in our time, and we in Welsh football. Just feels a bit of a crime that no one ever really talks to them about themselves. You know, I mean, you're right. Club Peldroid have done some fantastic stuff in terms of written interviews, now video interviews, that kind of stuff. But it's always about, you know, the game coming up and, you know, the season that's just gone. You've lifted the trophy. Well done, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there's just some really immense people I've met in football, and I just
some characters as well. To be fair.
And sometimes I'd like to hear a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
You know, their journey, that type of stuff. And he hasn't signed on the dotted line yet, but you mentioned an upcoming guest earlier on, so I can tell everyone listening now, Dean Morris has agreed to come on the podcast.
Oh, well,
so
I'll be a most new podcast.
well, so yeah, so I mean, look, whether he follows through or
look,
yeah,
you know,
I don't know.
Again, you know, Dean, I
coached him, see, for
I speak to him
the
privately.
season.
I speak to him privately. He's a great guy.
And but he's got such a story to tell. You know, people know Dean, the Twitter character, the caricature that they see on Twitter. The guy's won 9 Welsh leagues as a player before he went into coaching and management and anything else.
And you know, again, like I said to you earlier on, it's not a real word, social media. And Dean, I know he does a lot of it just to wind people up. Anyway,
absolutely.
And people build this perception of people, but I speak to him privately, you know, via Messenger and that, and he's a top guy. And and I don't understand why people get offended by so many people. You know, when I had one playing season at Merthyr Saints, and I got taught a statement, I'll stick with the rest of my life. If you're not hated, you're doing something wrong, which basically means there's always jealous people out there because you're doing something right. They want to try and bring you down. And like I say, Dean, one of, if not the most successful person at this level whilst in football. You know?
He's the one coach that we had when we were Crossy, whereby it's the first time I'd ever seen it. We're talking about people play philosophies in certain ways. Remember when he came to Crossy and he played 4-3-3, but locked 2 9s and a left winger. And I remember saying to Gareth, well, what's that about? And he'd obviously worked that, you know, a certain way of just thinking that's just off the charts.
He just wanted his team for the first 20 minutes to clip the ball over our right wing back and play down a channel. So he played 2 forwards and a winger. You know what I mean? But they went unbeaten that season. So who's going to say he was wrong?
But it goes back to what I said earlier on about taking too many managers out of football. Dean Morris cannot manage at this level of Welsh football. Yeah, which is absolutely.
Well, I'm going to ask him about it when he sits in that chair. But I've heard a vicious rumour that he's going to do his senior.
Oh wow! Well, you have some stick if he does that. He's joining the badge brigade.
I've heard it from 2 sources now. So Dean, when you hear this, let us know privately if it's true.
But it is criminal. It's criminal that he can't manage at this level because of a piece of paper.
Totally agree. And I mean, I think of other people I've coached with over the years, because I coached before I went into management, and a couple of them now wouldn't be able to manage. And you're thinking, how on earth is that?
And it's getting the balance right, because like I say, I firmly believe the level of coaching players get now is very good. You know, and there are some very good coaches out there, but the level of management is failing. You know, and that's the hard part. That's the hard part, is managing the players and
it's ironic, really, isn't it?
Characters.
At a time where the generation of players now probably need more man management than ever, it's an art that's kind of going out the game.
Yeah, it's tough, and you see at the top level, player power is bigger than ever these days, you know. And even at the top level, you know, it's head coach of this, head coach of that. You know, they lose the title of manager, and I think, difficult. We don't want to lose them out of football either, because it's a balance to get right. And look, as I say, again, the right coaches is really important, because I do want to say I was never a good player, but to have this level of coaching now that players again, I think I would have been better. You know, and it's sometimes it makes a difference, but also I need management as well, and I had that. You know, so I definitely wouldn't have made it at all as a player these days, because I just would have been a lost cause. You know, you need people to manage.
Yeah, it's funny, as a player, it was two. There was a guy when I was at Cardiff Met, because that's where I went to university, and then the other one, best manager I ever had, not coach, you would never have even put on a session. The best manager I ever had, I think, was probably a manager of a Sunday League team I played for, in terms of how he managed me and the team and got people playing for him. Amazing.
Well, the best manager I had, unfortunately no longer with us, and one of my close mates' brother, he used to manage Llanrumney, Keith Knott.
Oh,
so,
blimey, yeah.
So Keith managed us at Ynysddu, and he was a character. And I'll never forget the game. We talked about Baglan earlier on. We played Baglan. And when I was a player, I was a old-fashioned centre-half, you know. I'd kick people, head the ball. That was pretty much my game. But that was also, I knew I wasn't good enough to compete with some players, so I'd make sure they knew they were going to be in for a difficult game. And we played Baglan. They had a boy playing midfield. I forget his name, but he was a proper midfield destroyer. Anything come near him, he was having it. You know, and he broke the player. Good player, but just his job was just spoil the game. And I remember Keith calling me over and saying, Murph, when you get a chance, come up, step out of the back and flatten him. No problem. So the ball's gone down the touchline.
You need asking twice,
The ball's gone down the touchline. I could have made the ball, done 6 kick-ups I wanted. I've slowed myself down so he can get it, and I've just nailed him. Absolutely nailed him. The next thing I know, Keith is screaming, what on earth are you doing? Don't make it so obvious next time. Like, Keith, you told me to do it, I've gone and done it. But he was one of those, he'd get his arm around you, he'd tell you how it is face to face. You knew exactly where you were with him. And I thrived playing under him. And top guy, unfortunately, no longer with us, passed away probably 2 or 3 years ago now. And, you know, a top football guy, proper character, and people like somebody you knew. And again, somebody who played professional football, you know, he knew the game really well. It just, I loved playing under him.
Yeah. Well, you've said Treowen's going to be your last club. We'll quote you on that in the future.
Yeah, but I don't want it to be quick.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I don't want it to be quick, you know. And you know, it's my local club. I say I'm there. I'm at the clubhouse all the time, you know. And it's and I want to. I try to do it at every club. Leave something behind. I want to leave the club in a better place than when I've come.
Sure.
And I know I've done it at other clubs, whether people perceive that or not. The clubs know I have. And that's where I want to be with Treowen. But we've got a long-term plan there. I want to try and realise as much of that. Treowen will get the Welsh Prem hopefully one day. It won't be with me because it's that long-term
it'll be that far in the future. Yeah.
But it's if I can get us one step closer to that, and we've already done that. You know, getting up to the first step is getting to tier 2.
Well, to be fair with that type of thing, you know, just to sort of wrap it up, you know, that type of thing has happened, doesn't it? If you think of the job that you know, the pair that we used to have good battles with back in our sort of previous club days with STM Sports and AFC Porth, Dominic and Damien Broad at Pontypridd. Yeah. You know, they did so much to get that club to where it is today, on and off the pitch.
It was on his arse when they took over.
You know, when they took over that team, we played them about 3 weeks later, didn't we? And honest to God, they played a flat back 10.
2 banks of 5. 2 banks of 5.
They didn't come out their half. Right, so if they cleared the ball and they couldn't get it, they didn't even chase it. They just stayed in their own half, and we beat them 1-0. It was when we got promoted with Llanwern. But you know, so I saw them 3 weeks in, and then when you see what that club was when they left on and off the pitch, look, not everyone loves it that they moved out of Ynysddu Park. But when you see purely what that club is today to what it was, they were a massive part of that journey, and I'm sure you can do the same.
It's difficult, you know, because people don't want to move on, but sometimes you've got to move to different areas to try and progress. And, you know, only today, Colin Catton's left Bala. He took over when they were tier 3, 22 years later.
Well, when you get tired with Treowen, we'd love to have you down at Llanrumney.
Yeah, hopefully it's a long. I can't because it's my last club.
You've seen the pitch,
I hope it goes really well.
Something to build.
It's fantastic to see local community clubs trying to develop themselves. And we the last thing for me on Treowen, when we were close to getting promoted, the amount of measure we're having about going to Ystrad to play on a 3G pitch, because our ground won't meet tier 3, we would have stayed in tier 3. We wouldn't have moved our ground to go to tier 2.
No, I like that.
It's important that the community are involved, and you look at Risca now. Risca are moving back to Tiaisaf Park, and it's great that they are, because
that was a horrible place to go crowd-wise, but not the worst pitch in the world, decent sort of place to go. But they were a horrible crowd.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah,
but
right on top of it,
it makes the club sustainable again,
Yeah.
because you look at their first team now, I think most of their players are out of Caerphilly because of the academy and being in Ystwyth. So Yswyth's a long way away from Ystwyth. So we wouldn't have done it. We would have stayed in Tier 3, but we'll keep growing where we are. And I say this year, look, if we stay in the Cymru South, this year is a good season for us. You know, I'm certain we'll be competitive, we'll do well, and we'll surprise a few. We'll have a couple of hammerings. That's the way football goes at that level.
We'll keep an eye out for the results, and then hopefully you're back on at the end of the season telling us what a great year it's been.
It'd be nice.
Yeah,
it'd be nice.
But really appreciate you
my pleasure.
being our first guinea pig. We're going to call you the guinea pig.
Every guest will get better and better.
Yeah, but thanks for being so open, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. Thank you,
Thank you, mate.